thank you everybody for joining us. Today is a special CIRP technical discussion about some work going on up in the New England district. It's not a CIRP funded study per se, but again, whenever we work with y'all in the field on your own projects and we're applying the technologies that are produced inside the program, we really get a lot of insight and guidance and direction on where to take the technology at the next level, and to to apply these tools is to really do the development work. So for us, I think showcasing some of these throughout the year is important. So I actually pushed a few of our CMS modelers to pull up some of the important work that's ongoing with customers that we work with and the different district offices. And this particular project came up. It's got some really interesting recent results. So I haven't seen any of this. It's new to me. I'm excited to see that. I'm so glad that we have both Brandon Raymond from the New England District and Dr. Hung-Hai Lee here at CHL to present today. And of course, anybody that's online, if you guys need PDH credits, I can set those up for you for the 1 hour. Just send me an email if you need that. And I think we need to mute Doug.
Yeah.
Before we get going.
So she didn't.
Thank you. All right. And with that, I'll let Dr. Lee and Brandon take it away.
Okay, thank you, Tanya. Good morning, good afternoon. There's some people from West Coast. And my name is Hung-Hai Lee. And as you can see the title, the work we have been done, Merrimack Estuary Sediment Management Study. And with Mitch Brown, we started work in 2012. So the work lasted about 4 years to 2016. And now the result already been published as tech report in 2018. The work we have been doing with the New England district. So today I'm just briefly introduce the work we have been doing, and then I switch table to Brandon, and he has been working on that similar work lately. So next, please. So the study area is the Merrimack Estuary, and you can see from this map. And the study area including Newburyport Inlet and the Plume Island Sound, Plume Island, and also Salisbury Beach in the north, and also Plume Island Beach in the south. And the area, like hydro condition, we have a mixed tide in the area, and mean tidal range you see is 2.6. It's pretty big tidal range, and also the average significant wave height is 1 meter for that specific period, 2012 to 2014, and the sediment sampling data show the area sediment coverage is pretty much coarse to very coarse sand. The next, please. And the problem and objective, and the figures show the long-term shoreline change in the Plume Island Beach from 1928 to 1994. And so the survey data indicate there's an average 4 meter shoreline retreat between 2000 and 2009. It's quite a big change in the area. And this shoreline retreat poses a threat to local community, to infrastructure and the coastal property. And so the district organized work with ERDIC. So we started the project using a numerical model to work on some alternative originally proposed by the district. And the purpose is to reduce the erosion of the beach and decrease shoreline, and also increase navigability of the channel, navigation channel. Next, please. So this is the original CMS model, and we developed, and those are the model domain, and the model including the inlet, also entire Plum Island Sound. And so you can see this is the bathymetry and the model grid design, and also the major river, Merrimack River, also flow into the domain. Next one, please. And basically, the study we did has two phases, and the phase one, we have we call initial spring. So there's more than 20, I think. We use 19 alternative here. So originally proposed by New England District. And so those alternatives including structure modification and the sand management plan. Yeah. And the simulation we pick is a 1 month high energy simulation. Basically, it's a winter month simulation. And this is the phase one work. For phase two work, we pick 6 alternatives from original 19 alternative, and also some alternative we modify a little bit. The simulation we conducted is like 6 months, so it's a little bit long-term simulation. We see the change in response to the different alternatives. So you can see from the figure here, I just show few alternatives here. So the top one is like a sand management alternative. So we pick some material from inside the flood shore inside. So it's outlined by the polygon here, and place those material outside on the beach, and north side Salisbury Beach and south side Plum Island Beach. And also the lower alternative is some sediment basin we design inside the inlet, so as a sediment trap for the study. And then also we have detached breakwater in front of the beach to reduce the wave energy to protect the beach. And the last one I show here is a structure inlet alternative. We cut off part of the inlet to see the sediment transport change and the morphology change. So those are the first 2 phases we did like 6-7 years ago. And lately, New England District has been pick up the early study. I guess use a similar model we used before. So Brandon has been working on that, but he also developed a new alternative focus on South Jetty area. So next, I will ask Brandon to present his latest finding.
Great, thanks, Hanhai. Yeah, I'll jump off from there. Let's see here. I will share my screen. Here we go. So somehow I ended up with a different template. I'm not sure, but this is so just to back up a little bit. The regional sediment transport is sort of interesting around here. You know, regionally at the open coast, it goes from north to south. However, we've found that there is a local reversal that takes place over the ebb reattachment bar south of the inlet, and so that ends up kind of creating this. It ends up being sort of a nodal point, right? I don't know if you can see my mouse, but down towards where the highway that goes east-west and Plum Island Turnpike connects. And then sediment and moves to the north and kind of piles up against the south side of the South Jetty. What it looks like at the jetty depends on when you look at it. We've seen, this was some work by others, that they took some aerial photography where there's been erosion on the inside portion of the inlet, this area known as Reservation Terrace, which is actually the road that kind of sits behind it. But the jetty itself has had periods of time when it was in severe disrepair, and the shoreline looked a little bit different at that point. A couple other, and I'll get more into that in a minute here. There's also a spit, interestingly enough, which kind of takes off from this area known as North Point, and that seems to persist through all seasons. It shifts around a lot, but it always seems to be there. The site shoreline has done some interesting things in the last couple of decades. In 1992, there was a beach here, not much of a dune to speak of. Up in 2008, that area had accreted by about 34 feet per year, and some loss on the ocean-facing side of the beach over here, about 11 feet. And conversely, from 2008 to 2020, there's been a substantial loss at the Reservation Terrace neighborhood and a substantial gain on the ocean-facing side of the beach. And so we took this, this is 2003, we also nourished the beach through a Section 204 beneficial reuse project last April. And so we've been keeping an eye on that performance as well. This has started to migrate off to the north here, as you might expect, and this has started to narrow, as you might expect. But you know, we've been in conversations with the stakeholders here about that, and explaining that this is sort of a temporary fix. You know, we're trying to take a longer term look at this. The historical movement of the shoreline's a little bit interesting. This is built off of information from a 2018 DOTS study that took place. This is the y-axis here is the position of the shoreline from common kind of starting point. And I've split it up here based on the blue and teal as the inner shoreline, or the down, or you call it downdrift, and the yellow is the updrift. And what we see here from 1960 to present day is there's sort of sinusoidal or cosinusoidal behavior that takes place on the inside. This is more of a cosine, I suppose. And they do have this sort of inverse relationship. But what's further interesting, I think, is that these dark or thick dotted lines that I've put here is the approximate time when the South Jetty was repaired or rehabilitated. And it seems to me that there's a potential causal relationship between the position of the shoreline and what the health is of the South Jetty. We repaired it in 1968, at which point the position of the downdrift shoreline depleted and the updrift shoreline grew. These smaller dashed lines are significant coastal events in the Northeast. The blizzard of '78, Hurricane Bob, I think, is in here. The perfect storm, or the 1991 is in here as well, and then of course Sandy, kind of buried under this line, and a number of others. And it's at that point that I think the South Jetty started to experience some degradation. The inlet side, the downdrift side of this structure grew substantially, and we repaired it again in 2015, at which point there was a sharp decline in the position of the south or the downdrift beach and the sharp growth of the inland beach. Or I'm sorry, I'm mixing up my terminology, but the updrift beach. So let's see here. Oop. There we go. So for our study, we had a couple of different routes that we could go here. One was a section 111, which would have been at the behest of the stakeholders, which is to investigate, it's a planning study to investigate potential negative impacts of an Army Corps structure at a shoreline. The town or the stakeholders have since submitted a letter for that, and that is in the process of I think waiting for funding. In the meantime, this being a navigation asset, we had this other tool at our disposal being a major maintenance study that was fully funded within our within our bucket as navigation. As long as the structure, as long as we're working within the footprint of the existing structure, it was under $8 million in less than 2 years to build said modification. And so with that in mind, we leveraged work that had already been done from either ERDIC, the Virginia Institute of Marine Studies, and the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation. They had worked with, in 2021, with Applied Coastal in Massachusetts to develop a numerical study and some recommendations or surrounding the Merrimack Inlet. The work that we built off of from ERDIC was the model that Hong Hai mentioned earlier. What we did a couple of things here. We refined the grid cell spacing in and around the North Point shoreline. We also took a look at the tidal prism of the Merrimack Estuary and ended up building a separate coarser parent grid that went all the way up to the upstream dam, so that we're able to capture that tidal prism and provide some extra storage capacity to the overall model system. We looked at 2014 to 2015 as sort of our study period. That was based primarily on the fact that we had two fairly comprehensive topobathymetric data sets within that time frame. One in December of 14 and the other in June, 6 months later of 2015. And so that allowed us a chance to calibrate our sediment transport morphology before running various alternatives through it. And so the alternatives that we ran through were primarily based off of recommendations from the DCR study. Some of it also from recommendations from the harbor master, a primary stakeholder here. And those are, I have a slide here, but they are essentially a weir through the jetty, a couple different positions of that weir, and then also the removal of the outer leg of the jetty entirely. And we ran through those 6 months of simulation period to assess the impacts. The model boundary conditions are based off of tide stations to the north. We have a wave gauge far offshore at Jeffrey's Ledge. Winds came from the Isle of Shoals, and we also had river inflow at Merrimack River, Parker, and Ipswich River in the Great Estuary. The sediment, we had a wide range of sediment data collected for many years, either in the navigation channel or offshore. Ultimately, for the sediment transport, we used 4 classes of sediment, and those are the red dots there for the median grain size. here, and then these other data sets. This is depending on where in the domain you are. This is what we looked at for the different data sets. For the calibration period, this is from when we compared our differential bathymetry on the left from the measured data set, the 2014 and 15 topobathy that I mentioned, and then what the predicted data looked like for that same period of time. As you can see, there's some fairly good agreement, particularly in the shallow to intermediate water depths. I've highlighted those in white. The red areas, I think we could use some improvement, but I think this is also this is over prediction of sediment deposition and erosion. This is primarily, I think, a function of the sediment transport equations that we used in this case, which was the Lunge CIRP method, which I think notably does tend to over predict in deeper water. Kind of knew that going into this, but I think, and considering the fact that we're looking more at what is on the shoreline, I was less concerned. And so I think maybe future work, we might take a look at running with a different set of equations to see how that changes our answer. The alternatives we used, and I think my slides are a little out of order, maybe that's what threw me off, our focus was a bypassing weir in the South Jetty. The DCR report had a couple of different recommendations, and we tried we ran with 3 different versions of that. And then also, because we wanted to show kind of, we wanted to show our stakeholders that we were willing to work with them and take their suggestions. And so we talking to the harbor master, his primary suggestion was to remove the outer leg of the South Jetty, which we took a look at as well. This is what they sort of looked like spatially. The alternative one was sort of in the swatch zone area of the updrift shoreline. Alternative 2 is a slightly narrower version of that, closer to the break point. And then lastly, there was a what we call the run-up weir, was further up into the beach. And this was based roughly on historical aerial imagery when the jetty was in a lesser repaired state. There is sort of this overwash fan type feature that is seen occasionally at this location. So we're trying to mimic that behavior by lowering the jetty there. Oh, and then of course the outer leg as well. We took a shot at that. That didn't prove very fruitful, but we did want to include it for completeness. So ultimately, looking at a couple of different areas, we examined the net erosion deposition volumetrically between the different alternatives, and so that's how we were able to compare them quantitatively. Ultimately, the alternative 3 looked like it provided the best performance both at the seaside area of the South Jetty as well as the reservation terrace area. That was the most growth in the reservation area, and then the least impact on the seaside south of the South Jetty. The negative numbers here are in parentheses, so that would have been a loss in the base condition of 9,000 cubic yards at reservation terrace and a gain of 6,000, for example, at seaside of South Jetty. A little bit more. So ultimately from this, we were like, okay, well let's explore alternative 3 as our path forward. And so we drafted up some very rough plans for this, where we're moving stone down to about the mean high water elevation, and then putting new armor stone up to that elevation, so that we're not looking at like an exposed core of the jetty. And then additionally, this would require some regrading of the beach immediately in front of the weir, because I don't have any good pictures of it here, but the elevation difference across this jetty is stark. There, if you're standing on top of the south jetty here, there's about like a 10-foot to 20-foot drop going down the other side, and sand is completely piled up against the jetty on the side. So there would be some regrading to take place here. Ultimately, it would probably, I lowered this elevation down significantly. The weir elevation, I brought it down to the mean high water. I think the next step here will be for us to take a look at more, to really sharpen our pencils on what would be a preferred elevation there, and what would be the response from not just a 6-month period of time, but a full year of time, and just to get the full range of conditions that could take place. Obviously, we don't want to be removing more beach than we have to, and so I think that also feeds into why we would want to look at a lower, probably raising that crest elevation of the weir. We want to be cognizant of unintended impacts to other portions of the area of the beach, namely far further south where that nodal point is. There's been historic erosion that takes place there, and so we want to be cognizant of that, and any impacts that might take place there is really front of our mind as we go through this. So that is it. Once we have in navigation or O&M vernacular, we've expressed our capabilities to go to the next step, which is to say we're waiting for additional funding, so that we can basically take another stab at this with a more detailed look, and start working our way towards a design, and hopefully come up with a good solution here.